Good evening, everybody. We are live again, and we have Lila and Vrajalila and Ekavira prabhu. And we're starting our evening with, again, memories of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Haribol. Haribol.
Haribol. Thank you so much for joining us again and so graciously sharing stories about your Gurudev. So many stories that a lot of us don't know. You spent a lot of time with him, just the two of you in Hawaii. So last time we talked about your trip to Hawaii during the month of Kartik. And you were sharing with us that there were some devotees that helped, that came to help, either directly or indirectly. You mentioned a book that someone wrote, a young devotee who helped you with cooking. And so I was wondering if we could start with maybe if there were any other people that you wanted to thank or discuss that helped him through this process, that were present, again, directly or indirectly in one way or another, and thought that we would start there.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for asking that question. There were so many people that helped. And yes, Ekavira prabhu, you want to? Yeah. So, wow, there were many devotees that came during the course of that time. Some we actually, Ekavira prabhu and myself, we didn't really know. You know what? Can I just offer my obeisance to my Guru Maharaj? Can we just do that really quickly? Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Tanamane Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Statmane Gora Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Tanamane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vasatyade Shadarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai. So yes, there were many devotees. There were many Srila Prabhupada disciples, Guru Maharaj's God family that were living on the island of Hawaii. We were on the big island. That's where the house was that we were living. And when they learned that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was there, then many of them wanted to come over. And as I said, as we both shared last week, this was a transition time for our Guru Maharaj. He really wanted quiet time. So there were only a few of these devotees that he actually was available for. One that I remember there are two that I remember that I really want to thank. One was Paramahamsa.
Yes.
Yeah, Paramahamsa. He actually was someone that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, our Gurudev, knew in New Vrindavan. We had met him together with our Guru Maharaj, and he was serving in New Vrindavan for many years. He's a Prabhupada disciple. And he was actually doing something in Hawaii. He was studying, he was just studying something based on caring for the dying. So he was actually working with hospice care. And so he had a lot of knowledge about hospice care. However, at that time, as I said, our Guru Maharaj was in transition. So he hadn't yet quite accepted that, okay, he was going to be leaving. So we were the ones that got the information from Paramahamsa Prabhu. He would sit with us and share with us what the hospice care program was like and things we needed to know in order to be emotionally prepared ourselves for the transition our Guru Maharaj was going through. So he was very helpful. And then there was another devotee with his wife. He was the painter that painted for Srila Prabhupada.
Parikshit Prabhu.
Parikshit Prabhu. He painted these famous pictures that are all over ISKCON. And Parikshit Prabhu, both of these devotees, they were jewels because although they didn't come very often, they would call us and check and see how our Guru Maharaj was doing. And a few times, actually, Parikshit did come with his wife. His wife, actually, as we shared earlier, the house needed renovation. And so his wife came once with Parikshit Prabhu, and I believe they're both artists. So what she did is she brought all these sheets and she covered the wall of the house because the walls were not, they were under construction.
It was a construction site, so they were bare walls. Actually, the drywall hadn't been installed in some of the rooms yet.
Yeah.
So the insulation was even exposed, and the raw studs and everything. So it was, quite raw looking. As a matter of fact, we spent, before Vrajalila came, that evening after I cooked for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, we spent hours on the hands and knees just trying to clean the floors and everything. And it was a 2-day process of just cleaning and everything. And then Parikshit Prabhu and his wife came and she saw the place and she said, "I'll be back." And she came back with all these sheets and tacks and everything. And so we ended up transforming the place, putting up sheet walls.
Yeah.
Walls made of sheets.
When I came the next day, and she had just, she came actually after I was there, and I was shocked to see how the place was. Because you think, okay, you're going to Hawaii and you're going to this house, and like I said, we had no clue. And so, of course, my thinking is, we'll be in a nice place. That's how I was thinking. And there was a part of the house that was finished, which was really interesting. And this is the mood of my Guru Maharaj. There was an upstairs and a downstairs. It was a huge house.
About 3,500 square feet, something like that.
Very big house. The whole downstairs was completed. The entire downstairs. It was done. However, our Guru Maharaj wanted us to stay down there where it was completed. And that was quite amazing for us because he stayed in the room that the walls weren't, was incomplete. The walls needed to, be drywalled, and it needed walls. The walls, I can't really explain how that was. But in any case, I guess he had agreed with Ekavira Prabhu before I came that he would stay upstairs in that room. It had a private bathroom, and even downstairs had a private bathroom. He chose that room. And I remember when I came and I saw the room he was staying in, I thought, why didn't you take him downstairs? Why didn't he stay downstairs? And Ekavira Prabhu said, I took him down there and he just wanted to stay in this room. And
we deliberated, we went back and forth because Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, whenever he went into an environment, he scanned the whole place. And so he looked at every square inch of that house. And we did go downstairs. And mind you, he had just had an operation. So he had a cane and he was walking with the limp. And we went downstairs and he saw that room and he said, with Dasarath arranged, he said, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj should stay in this room. It's finished. And it was nice, actually. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj looked at it, and then he went back upstairs and he went into the room again, the main bedroom, the unfinished room. And he said, I'll stay up here. I was like, no, you need to stay downstairs. He said, no, I'll stay up here. This one has the bathroom access. I said, the one downstairs is the bathroom access. He said, no, you all should stay downstairs. Why? I mean, we can stay up here. Plus, the kitchen is right here. He said, exactly. It's much easier for me to walk from this room into the kitchen than for me to walk up and down those stairs. So you all should stay downstairs. I said, no, it's no way. He said, I don't want to walk up and down the stairs.
Mm.
But in actuality, looking back in retrospect and later as we were there, we understood that he actually wanted us to be in that room because he considered that it was already going to be a challenging time, and he preferred that we would have some level of comfort and some way that we could actually take refuge, have some space.
Yeah. It also, when I saw that room and I learned that he had chosen to be there, it reminded me so much of when I first met Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. I first met my Gurudev. We were in California at the temple in Los Angeles, and he had come through there. And to make a very to make a sweet story very short, I came to the place where Guru Maharaj was staying in Washington, D.C., which was a restaurant. And we had traveled from California to come there on the bus to meet him. That's literally when I first met him, even though anyway, that's another part of the story. But when I literally first saw him was in this restaurant called Govinda's in Washington, D.C. And I remember that night when I was told where I would sleep, there was another mataji there, and we had a bedroom downstairs where the restaurant was. And upstairs, there were a few prabhus, like maybe 2 or 3 prabhus that was helping with the restaurant, and they stayed upstairs. And I was asking, well, where does Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj stay? Where does the Guru stay? Where is he sleeping? And one of the devotees told me, oh, he sleeps in the book room, in the room where he had boxes of books that would be distributed there at the restaurant and that were donated from the BBT to him for book distribution. And he actually lived in that room. It was like packed with books. So he would put his mat down there at night. And then in the morning, I guess, I don't know how he did that, but he would just be present for all the devotees.
Now, mind you, the book room, which she's describing, was actually a 6x8, if you will, 6x6 foot closet full of books. Yeah. Which allowed him to have just a little space to curl up on a mat and sleep. It wasn't really a room, quote unquote. It was actually a little closet full of books.
Anyway, the point is he was physically austere. He was physically austere, and he could do a lot of austerity. However, dealing with death brings a different kind of austerity. It's a physical austerity, and it's also a mental austerity. And so even though he was really austere, it was really interesting that, as I shared last time when we did this program, that when he was used to eating austerely at different periods in his devotional life. However, when dealing with death, it was a lot more difficult. And I guess now, as Ekavira Prabhu says in retrospect, and I listen sometimes to his tapes. I was listening to one of his tapes where he was saying, we have to die to live. And in that die to live, it's important to the mood he was sharing was the mood of when we live, we need to live in that consciousness that death can come at any time, and we need to prepare for death. That was so poignant when he was saying that in that class as I listened to it. And I was thinking, okay, he had 1 month to prepare for death there in Hawaii, not under the best conditions, very austere, and he was really practicing that physical austerity to prepare himself for that. And it was difficult. It was really very difficult for him. So these devotees that would come at different times to help out in different ways, whether it was making the place nicer or whatever, cooking, helping with the cooking, or there were a couple of devotees, disciples that were in Honolulu. And I remember once they kept asking, could they come? Could they come? And then once he said, okay, let them come. It was one of the weekends. It might have been Govardhan Puja. It was one of the celebration weekends in Kartik. And he said, let them come, let them come. And so I remember like 3 or 4 devotees came from Honolulu. And we had like this really beautiful little ceremony, with them and with our Gurudev. And we were really happy because, of course, it was having devotee association. And I know he was also happy, even though he was more concerned about being more internal. I saw that he was really happy when devotees would come. However, those devotees only stayed for like a weekend. And they would remind us of devotee association and life. They would remind us of life. Whereas we were there really in a mood of, thinking, understanding that there was a possibility that he was going to be leaving. And some other devotees were the other devotees that I can remember that were very present for him were devotees through phone calls. And there are many of his godbrothers and godsisters, some godsisters would call. I remember Malati calling different time. I remember Bear Krishna Maharaj calling. I remember different devotees. That's what Prabhu, of course, would call all the time. But he had several devotees of his God family that would call him. And he would always be really happy to have those conversations. And especially when His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj would call, because, they were such close friends. And one time I remember, this is a personal story. I don't know if I've shared this, but I'm sure I've shared it. I don't know, Joe, if I shared it publicly. But I remember once, it was a little difficult. It was becoming a little difficult for me because, my Guru Maharaj, I've always revered the fact that I had this opportunity to serve him because he was just such an example. I'd never met anyone like that in my whole life. I was just always intrigued by how much love he had for Srila Prabhupada. Everything he did was for Srila Prabhupada. And even this dying, he was always calling out to Srila Prabhupada. And so I was enamored by the fact that he loved Srila Prabhupada so much that his whole life was for his guru. And so I wanted to learn that. I wanted to learn how to be like that. I really saw my Guru Maharaj in the mood that he saw his Guru Maharaj, because I really kind of was attracted to how deep he was connected to his guru. And I thought, I wanna be like that. I wanna be like that. So anyway, there were times when it was difficult for me because he's guru, and at the same time, death is showing things that I'm not familiar with, I'm not aware of. I don't know how to deal with it, and Ekavira is more. I believe he's more grounded because he's. Even though sometimes I had to intervene in that service with Ekavira and our Guru Maharaj, because my Guru Maharaj is like a guru, he's a leader. He's he was stubborn in the way he did things, and he had a certain way that he wanted to do everything, and some things he didn't want to do that was good for him, and he didn't want to eat the things that was really good for him, and it was just kind of sometimes a little challenging. And so I remember we had a phone call once from Radhanath Maharaj. Well,
let's lead into it.
Okay.
Actually, we asked for assistance, and I think we touched on this point last week. we asked for assistance for devotees to come to help. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said, no, you all can handle it. And I said, well, it would be really helpful if there was some more assistance. And no, you should do it. And so anyway, we continued on. And I mean, she's touching on this point. It was a little further on in the process, but since she brought it up, we were having a real challenge at one point. And Vrajalila and I, after I got Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's bed ready and he took rest, we came down. I remember we were just talking. And we were just talking about how difficult it was. And it was almost midnight. And we continued talking. And then the phone rang. I said, midnight? Why is the phone ringing this late? And so we said, you better get that. And so we went and got the phone. And I picked up the phone and I said, Haribo? And then the person on the other end of the line said, Hare Krishna? And I said, yes, Haribo? He said, this is Radhanath Swami? Is this Ekavira, prabhu? And I said, oh, yes, it is. Please accept my obeisance, Maharaj. He said, yes, I'm calling from India. And then Vrajalila, when she heard, this is Radhanath Swami, Vrajalila almost snatched the phone out of my hand and it was on my head. She almost took my head off grabbing the phone and we're fighting over the phone. And so, we hold the receiver and we're both talking to Maharaj. And you can continue on.
Yeah, and I was really struggling. I didn't know how to be a disciple and at the same time kind of understand the needs that my Guru Maharaj was having during that period. And so I needed to talk to someone that could understand. And there wasn't too many people that I knew that would understand. So when Maharaj got on the phone, it was like, oh, please, I just need to share this, you know? So I shared with Maharaj, I said, it's really hard. I'm a disciple and there's times when I would say to my Guru Maharaj, well, why can't you just eat, this is what it is or whatever. And I knew after I would do that, I would be feeling really uncomfortable, or I would ask him, why don't you just take the medicine? Or why don't you do this? Or why don't you I was feeling really uncomfortable speaking to him sometimes for things that was, part of his needs that he didn't want to acknowledge sometimes. And so anyway, I shared with Maharaj what was happening for me, and it was just two of us there. And so then Maharaj says, he explained to me, in such a beautiful way. I will never forget that. And he said, very simple words. He said, you just have to understand and you just have to see his human side. You just have to see his human side. And at that point, I realized, oh yeah, he's like a human. He's like my guru, but he's like a human, And it just was like an awakening that that was very, very valuable, because the next morning, remember, this is still all Kartik time, So the next morning, when we saw our Gurudev for a morning program, which he really relished, he loved, he has so much affection for his Radha Shyama deities. So we would always make sure we were up in time to make sure that the deities, were dressed. That was my service also, to dress Radha Shyam and get them ready for the morning program. And when he would come out of his room and so this day, after speaking with Maharaj, I thought, okay, what can I do differently? I need to shift, the disciple mood of just being like in awe and reverence, which of course is a part of a disciple mood. at the same time, I needed to adjust to the fact that my Guru Maharaj was making a transition, you know, in his own way of accepting his death, his imminent death. And so the next day, so that day I decided, well, I'll just act like his mother. I'll just be like a mom. I'll just take on that mood of a mom. And that's what I did. And then a whole relationship changed. You know, it was like I became mom in that period of him leaving. And it was like that until he left, actually. He allowed me to be his mom, and he allowed me to talk to him and suggest things. And, you know, he gave me like a whole different way of how I could be comfortable to be in his presence while he was going through what he was going through. And Bhakti Maharaj was the person that actually helped me with that so much. So yeah, that was a very interesting time, very interesting experience. And up until my Guru Maharaj left, I remember when my Guru Maharaj left, he was leaving, just before he was leaving. And he asked me, can you make me soup? And I just laughed, you know, inside. I mean, I was happy because I remember how many times he refused my soup. You know, he was just like, no, I don't want it, you know. But yeah, so just before he left, he asked me, and you know, at that time he couldn't really eat or do anything. And I remember making him this water soup with a little something in it. And I watched him, he only like took 2 tablespoons of it or something like that. And maybe even a tablespoon, but I could see that he was relishing and really just like letting me know, I really did appreciate you doing that. I really did. I did appreciate it. You know, me cooking the kind of things that was healthy for him. However, he didn't always like it, you know. Actually, when we came back on the East Coast, and he was then at the Institute in Washington, and we have 2 very dear God family, Kunti and Madhava, and they keep the Institute going. And so when we had come back there after the Kartik and after everything, Madhava had arranged for him to get his leg amputated. At that time, I remember my god sister Kunti, she used to sneak him all the things that he wanted. You know, she would just sneak it to him, and I would be like, oh, whatever, you know. I'm like, okay. Because at that point, we knew that he was probably going to leave. And then I remember another time I approached him because Ekavira was very strict in the application of all the things he needed. He was really like, you know, just, okay, this time you do this time you do that. And sometimes my Guru Maharaj wouldn't want to do it, you know? And so—
Not sometimes, most of the time.
Many times. And then I would get caught in the middle, like, because he would tell me, I don't, he and I would be like, because now I'm like, Mom, right? I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do, you know, Krishna? And so, so one time I just said, okay, I'm just going to ask my Guru Maharaj in front of Ekavira Prabhu. And so I said, Ekavira, can you please come? And so we went to my Gurudev. And I said to my Guru Maharaj, I said, Ekavira is having some challenges that you don't want to take the medicines that are being given to you. And some other things. And I said, and I don't know what to say to him. I can only say that I can only ask you to tell him, are you always going to do what he wants you to do? And so then he looked at Ekavira straight in his eyes and he said, no, I'm not. And I think it was after that Ekavira just like, okay, he just stepped back and realized, you know, my Guru Maharaj is gonna deal with his death the way he wanted to deal with his death, you know, his dying process. And I mean, there wasn't, you know, he did do some of the things, but then it was kind of like, look, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. So that was another part. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was actually the question was, are you going to do the protocol the way that it's recommended that you do the protocol? And the response was no, it wasn't what I wanted him to do.
Yeah.
It was the actual protocol that I was trying to implement. And so, yes, I was pretty strict. As a matter of fact, when some of the devotees like Kunti would come around when he was actually going through the protocol, they try to sneak him ice cream, and he wasn't supposed to be taking ice cream at that point in time. And so he'd give me some service that would require me to
not be there,
not be present. And I said, hey, yeah, I know what's going on now. I'm not that dumb. So,
yeah. And I would pretend like I don't know anything. I don't see anything. I don't know anything. But anyway, that all happened after we left Hawaii, because in Hawaii, we really, at that time, as I said, we were really focused on him getting his health back and focused on him, like perhaps, getting better. And so that was the process that we were going through. Yeah. So, yeah. And would you have a question, Lucy? Or maybe we'll tell another pastime.
I do, but I want to hear so much. These are such beautiful and heartwarming pastimes, just really getting to know the man whose books we read and whose instructions we relish. We're really getting to know him as a human. And it's actually very inspiring to know that someone so elevated and so loving and so wise was a human and had these qualities. You touched a little bit on this, but one of the things he mentioned in the book was that the prayers that he had were helping him. They were helping him accept death with celebration, and he used that word. So I was just wondering if there was anything around that you could share about what he meant by that. What did he mean that he was accepting it with celebration? Because at the same time, you're saying he wanted to be internal, but there was a mood, and he mentions it a few times. So I was just wondering about that, what that means, how to accept death with celebration.
That point was definitely something that he did accept, death with celebration. However, I'd like to add that wasn't the prominent mood in Hawaii. The mood that was taking place in Hawaii was his internal churning of having that desire, as we mentioned last week, to go out and reach and serve devotees and serve Srila Prabhupada's movement, and trying to assist devotees in being happy in their service in Krishna consciousness. Having that desire while at the same time going through this experience of having to deal with his health, and the possibility that he might not be able to do that, to be able to go out and reach these people. So that was the prominent thing that was taking place in Hawaii. So the acceptance of the dying process and death and celebration, having that mood of celebration, that took place a little bit later. In Hawaii, there were, I did want to touch on a certain point, and maybe Vrajalila, I could touch on that after that. You want to add to this, and I'll touch on, we talked about some of the austerity, and I just wanted to touch on that particular point, but go ahead.
Yeah, when I think of celebration, at least in Hawaii, because it was a whole process starting before Hawaii, because, before that we were at a clinic in Mexico, and before that we were in Palm Springs in California, and then we went to Hawaii, and this is all during the process. And so when I think of of the kind of celebration, or at least that word that my Guru Maharaj used. For him, celebration always meant sharing Srila Prabhupada with others. It always meant understanding that we're not this body and there's something beyond all of this externals. You know, he lived that. That was his life. And he would do anything to help people to understand that. And that was celebratory in the sense that when we were in Mexico at the clinic there, he would be getting treatments. I mean, the doctors would be doing treatments on him, and he would be preaching to tourists that were coming to that clinic.
Yeah.
And in Hawaii, I would say some of the celebration that he was having was writing that book. Well, that was one of them, because he always kind of liked the water. He always liked the ocean. However, he never gave himself time to allow himself to just be at the ocean, you know, because he was always in that consciousness of being active for Srila Prabhupada, doing what was necessary for Srila Prabhupada. And he always lived in that mood of knowing that death can come at any time. You know, he used to write these diary letters to Srila Prabhupada, and he would write in the mood that today can be my last day. So he had that consciousness. It's just when it actually came, then it needed, you know, then he needed to move into it. And I believe that was also a celebration when I think of it, because I could understand how he was just like crying out to Krishna, so crying out to Srila Prabhupada, you know, in a really, in a mood not of in a mood of knowing that there's a beauty on the other side of all that he was experiencing. He knew that. He knew there was a beauty. And he would cry out to get to that place where he could just be experiencing that beauty. And so he was writing, and he was going to all these preaching programs, even though he was in pain. His foot would be throbbing, and you know, and when devotees came, it was like he would be. It was joyful. It was very joyful. So even though it was difficult emotionally, in one sense, it was joyful spiritually, because we were able to really go deeper with him facing death. I mean, we saw him do like incredible things. I mean, Ekavira maybe can tell this story. Once we went to see this doctor who was going to give him an IV, and this was one of the natural treatments. And when we got to this place where we're supposed to meet this doctor is walking into the building. Well,
first there was.
Okay, I'll let him tell that story.
Anyway, this particular doctor that Vrajalila is speaking about, it was a treatment in which Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was not so receptive of receiving the treatment. And that's, it goes along with the point that I was expressing in regards to the consistent. I'm glad Vrajalila spoke the way what she was speaking on, that the consistent mood of celebration in the dying process, because you know we could experience Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's mood of celebrating the dying process when he was engaged in reaching out to others, even in Hawaii. At the same time, especially for me, because I was with him at least privately, at least 6 to 10 hours a day, administering medicines and reading to him and contemplating. It was a very challenging time physically for him. And that's when the human side was being exposed, and it was being exposed a lot to me. And it was very purifying for me. Much so that, yeah, I'll talk about that later, but it was an extremely purifying process for me. And so when he was around people, though, I saw that there was a sense of love and affection and compassion that was coming out of him on a totally different level. Because, I used to observe, we travel with him, and people in different places, they'd ask similar questions. And I said, okay, I contemplate, how is he going to answer this question? And I could get a general idea of how he would answer it. And so, but in Hawaii, especially, he would answer the question in a totally different way than I would think he was going to answer it. I was like, wow, I didn't even think he would answer it like this. And so his mood was so much more deeper and loving and compassionate, and so in that sense, I could see the celebration that was accepting the dying process and the celebration, because he was engaged in something that he really loved to do. And that was actually reaching out to other people and exposing or sharing Srila Prabhupada, sharing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and sharing, Krishna consciousness with others. And sometimes it wasn't that he was giving, quote unquote, Krishna, saying Krishna. He was actually just being himself and being loving, to the extent that the person that he was reaching out to wanted to know, what is his process? What is he actually engaged in? How could he develop this type of loving mood? They would have a desire to know about Krishna consciousness without him being so direct.
Yeah, and I think, for him, he was really connected with his disciples, very connected. He has so much affection for his disciples. So, during that period, I believe, just having to come to that understanding that he would be separated from his disciples, that he would practice something that he had been teaching us all those years, to be detached. He was definitely putting that into practice, and that was a celebration. There was lots of things that happened trying to, in doing that. So there's another story that, and we'll close with this story, I think. There was one program we went to one night, and he was just speaking really lovingly with these devotees and encouraging. And like I said, there were lots of different groups in Hawaii. So they all came together. And that night, though, when he came home, when Ekavira brought him home, he was really weak, like really weak. And if I remember correctly, I just remember that you were having to carry him.
Okay, that's another. He
was
that was actually after coming back from the hospital.
Oh, okay.
But and that requires a much more time than we actually have.
Yeah, because there were several times when his body would just become so weak by doing some activity. So this particular story that I was going to go into was one that actually did have it. This one, and Ekavira knew what I was going to talk about. So this was the hospital scene. However, there were times when he would go and do these programs, and he would come back, and he would be so weak, and Ekavira would need to just give him extra care, like rebandage his foot or put his foot up or do things that would, kind of help him to become more comfortable. And yet he would still, if somebody called the next day, and we would be like, okay, let's not even tell him that they're trying to get him to go, right? But if he would ask us, who called? Who called? Because you can't lie to your spiritual master, right? So we would say, well, they're calling from this group and da-da-da. And he would be like, yes, we should go. And then the night before, Ekavira would have been up with him like till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because he was, his health had become so weakened. But he never, that was something that I experienced from him. He was physically deteriorating in front of us. However, his soul, his spirit, was always so like in a celebration mood. He was always in that mood of like, okay, we gotta go, and this place. And sometimes in Hawaii rained a lot. So he would be like, okay, no. And, he was like always thinking that he was always kind of having that mood that he wasn't sick. Yeah. At the same time, he was really sick.
And it reminds me of a time, this wasn't in Hawaii, this was actually when we left San Diego, and the doctor gave a 2-week protocol for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj to undergo. And he wanted us to remain, or Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj to remain in the local area so that after the 2-week period, he could come back and be re-examined. And so we are friends, and we talk about the devotees that we appreciate, and that's Radha Dasi and Yudhisthira Prabhu. Radha Dasi's mother managed a resort in Palm Desert, California. And we went to this little resort area, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was undergoing treatment, and it was really difficult. And one night there was a preaching program that was arranged. And throughout that day, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was so sick, and he was coughing up mucus and everything. And he was just in the bathroom regurgitating. He couldn't eat. He was extremely weak. And then at one point, he didn't say anything, but I went into the bathroom and I saw, remnants of blood. He was coughing up blood. I said, no, we can't go to this program. You shouldn't do it. He said, no, we made the commitment. We're going to the program. And so he got into the car and he was just lying. He had his head up against the headrest. And it was so difficult. He was so weak. When we got to the program, the devotees greeted him. He had this big smile. He walked into the program. I said, oh my God. I mean, it was like nothing was going on. And he sat there and he gave the program with a big smile. And I told Yudhisthira, he was extremely sick. I don't know what's going on now. And then after the program, we got back in the car. He said, okay, let's go back. And he laid back at his headrest. And he was still sick.
He was very sick. He was sick on the way.
He was so sick and so weak. And then when he got back in the car, we could see again. But when he was in front of the devotees, he wanted to be inspiring. He wanted to inspire the devotees in the group.
Yeah.
And I remember when he got back, he went to take rest immediately. And we didn't see him the next morning at his normal time. He'd get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning at that point. And we didn't see him until about 8 or 9 because he was so weak.
Yeah, we experienced many, many situations like that. And in relationship to thanking devotees, we talked about that. There are devotees from all over the world that contributed to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's healthcare, for us to be able to travel and to be able to go to the clinic. The clinic was expensive. It wasn't, in Mexico. And, the traveling alone and then having the medicines and all of that, it cost so much. And the devotees, everybody was just so generous, so kind. We didn't have to, that was one thing, we never had to worry about money. And then we had 2 really amazing personalities, Chintamani, my god sister, and Anasuya, that were caring for the Lakshmi. So all we had to do was make a phone call. We need this, we need that. And the Lakshmi was just forwarded to us, or tickets or whatever we needed. That was just for us, for all of us, for my Guru Maharaj. That was that relieved so many stresses that could have been there in that process if he had to worry about money. So the people that contributed, to his care.
Bani Mali Pandit Prabhu, he did contribute, I think, the first 20,000 or 25,000.
Just incredible.
Once he found out that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had cancer and was diagnosed with cancer, and the treatments in Mexico were very expensive, he came and he just wrote a check. And it was either 20,000 or 25,000. But that was one of the first donations that we received, and it was so generous.
Vadamali Pandit Prabhu is a disciple of Mukunda Maharaj. And everyone, so he was just, he's always been so very kind to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And so many people would send $10, $5, whatever, it would help with his care. And then his doctor from Mexico, Dr. Jimenez, he was incredible because we used to stay in contact with him in Mexico in terms of what are we doing wrong, what are we doing right. He was our guide in terms of doing the treatments. And one time, I guess this is the last story for real. One time, Tony, his name was Tony Jimenez, he came to Hawaii because something was happening. He was having a crisis. He had many crises. And so then we called Tony and we said, look, you got to get here. Because our Guru Maharaj didn't want to leave. It's Kartik. He's determined. I'm staying here. I'm not going. We're doing Kartik here. I was like, okay, let's call Tony and find out what to do, the doctor. So then Tony says, okay, I'm going to come. I'm going to come to Hawaii to meet with my Gurudev. And so with our Gurudev. So he comes. And then our Gurudev is like, I want to go see the volcano that is in Hawaii, some volcano, okay.
No,
Yeah. So anyway, we decided we would all go to this volcano thing. And so that's where I remember a meeting happened with my Gurudev. This doctor, Ekavira and I are there. The doctor brought one of his associates, and we're at this volcano. I don't even know the name of the volcano, but I think that was the only time I ever got to see one of these, I guess these are the wonders of the world in Hawaii. So in all of this was some of the celebration I can think about, because our Guru Maharaj would arrange that we would have these adventures. We had so many adventures in his sickness, in his illness. And we're like, I remember I was just so petrified in so many times because there were things he wanted to do. And I would be like, oh, I don't know if he can do this. I don't think he can do this. And he would just show us every time, look, come on, you can do this. You can do this. So I when I think of the question you asked, Lucy, about celebration, I believe death is a very beautiful thing. Going through the process is a transition. It is definitely a transition. And as my Guru Maharaj says, we got to die to live. We need to live our lives in ways that we can prepare for death. However, the actual process of leaving this body, the actual death part, when the soul leaves, when my Guru Maharaj got to that part where he had accepted that he was going to leave, and he now was just firmly fixed in that leaving, and being with Krishna and Radharani and Srila Prabhupada, that was very beautiful to experience, extremely beautiful.
And that was a celebration. Actually seeing him in that particular mood, actually embracing the dying process, that consistently. And mind you, that was, again, I say, it came at glimpses in Hawaii. That was a different, this is actually how could I say? I want to say, this is a process that took place, and that consistent celebration, and we could talk about that in the future, took place definitely in Gita Nagari. when he embraced the dying process, it was amazing things that took place in Gitanagari.
Yes.
Amazing.
Mystical.
Mystical. Totally amazing.
And we also want to close with thanking Dasarat Prabhu, who made that possible. The house in Hawaii.
And it was Murali Krishna and Radharani and goodness, Brihan and Mahesh.
We talked about Mahesh last week.
week.
The devotee that I think Urmala's son or Urmala, one of Urmala's family member, he organized programs. They had a really beautiful place. Very beautiful place. Very nice. So many wonderful, wonderful things. So in any case, we want to thank Dasara Prabhu because because of him, we were able to have these amazing experiences with our spiritual master. And we learned so much in that month of Kartik. So this month of Kartik month is just very special for us. It brings a lot of memories, and at the same time, it's such a sweet month, right? It's such a sweet month. So we can only put these memories as a way of expressing sweetness to the devotees. I guess that's as best as I can express myself with the process. So Lucy.
Thank you so much. This is so beautiful. I can't get enough. And I agree with Kishore Rani. We definitely want to hear about those mystical things in Gitanagari.
Yes. I mean, there's also the mood of austerity that came through, the human side in Hawaii. So much.
So I think we're on our edge of our seats, and I think that this calls for maybe a final part 3 to these pastimes. There's so much to learn from him. I mean, even just in this one short hour, there's so many lessons that we can take from it. Thank you so much. So grateful for taking the time to share these things with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kishore so much for coordinating these programs. And thank you, Leela, for being such an excellent moderator. We thank you. We thank you both. We're grateful. Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.